Also, following what's happening at the border, apprehensions already surpassing 2018 levels. The president is threatening a partial border closure if Mexico doesn't do more. We've got former ICE senior attorney John Gihon on all of this. John, I think what is at stake here is a switch from the left. It's one thing to hear, a number of the Democratic candidates, Cory Booker among them, but a host of others now who are weighing in on this and saying, yeah, we've got a problem here, and to ignore it is to risk, foolery. What do you make of this?
Hi, Neil. Thanks for having me back on. This absolutely is a problem, but unfortunately, it's not a problem that we can detain and deport our way out of. Because as long as people from Central America are leaving a terrible, terrible situation there and coming to the United States with even a glimmer of hope of being able to stay temporarily, they're going to keep coming. And the waves and waves of migrants coming are going to keep up, unless and until we solve the problems back in the Northern Triangle countries of Guatemala, El Salvador, and Honduras. And until we solve the problems there and make those stable, safe, and economically viable environments, we're going to continue to have people coming to the United States for the American dream.
Tom Friedman, the latest, the New York Times columnist, I think left of center would be a fair characterization, where he was just saying, not that a wall is exclusively the answer, but something, a coordination of something is, and refusal to acknowledge what's going on is bad on both parties. I'm paraphrasing here, but what do you think of the message he's sending?
I think he's absolutely right there. We cannot ignore the crisis because status quo simply isn't working anymore. You have elements on the right and elements on the left which have been perfectly fine with the way immigration policy has been enforced for the last 20 years because it's benefited everybody. But right now we're seeing an unprecedented number of family units, that is, mothers with children and unaccompanied minors coming across our southern border. And these are simply not sustainable workforces that everyone seemed to be okay with before. 20 years ago, we were having primarily single young men coming in looking for work, and they were filling gaps in the economy, and so both sides were fine. Now we don't have that anymore. We have women and we have children, and we have overloaded school systems, and we have overloaded social structures, and so both sides are suffering. The people coming are suffering. The people in the border towns are suffering, and this is a problem we have to address immediately.
Yeah, and I don't want to overstate it that suddenly Friedman is not into the president's corner on this. He says it needs to be fixed, but the wall is only part of the solution. He calls out a lot of these other solutions that actually in the past both parties have at least ventured, but they end up going nowhere. Do you think that, given the fact that more Democrats, the movers and shakers on the left, and now a couple of the presidential candidates, to say nothing of Jay Johnson, Barack Obama's former Homeland Security Secretary, when they're kind of saying the same thing, not exactly the same thing, that it will be different, that they will do something now?
I think the stage is set to start the negotiations for comprehensive immigration reform, or at least piecemeal border security and asylum reform, and something to do with the DACA and the Dreamers individuals. But in this climate, I don't think anybody on the left wants to give President Trump a win, even if it's a win for the left. And so I don't see anything happening in Congress up until the election, and then maybe after the election we'll see something maybe in a lame duck section. But what we can see are tweaks to the system. The Attorney General can change things. He can change immigration policy and enforcement on a whim. We can see change in the Code of Federal Regulations. We can see things around the periphery where if all sides are agreeing to it, we can solve some of these problems and deal with some of these issues.
All right, John, we'll have to watch because we're not at that stage yet, but I think more and more are agreeing that something has to be done. It's just acting on that, to your point. John, thank you very, very much.
Right.